When I woke up, everyone I saw had a number floating above their head. My mom's was 9 for 50. My dad's was 8, 639. The numbers over our nanny and the estate manager were much lower, some in the hundreds, others in the double digits. I was reeling. I grabbed my keys and hit the streets to test my sanity. Most of the strangers I passed had numbers in the single digits. Seeing anything over 10 was a rare occurrence. I headed back home with a million questions, only to find that my parents' numbers had shifted. Compared to when I left this morning, both had dropped by exactly one. A cold shiver raced down my spine. Was this the remaining number of times I would see them? The thought made my blood run cold. Later that day, I ran in my lifelong rival, Julian Sterling. The number above his head? A staggering, terrifying 3. To test my theory, I went to the Sterling estate first thing the next morning. Seeing such an unexpected guest, Julian's parents beamed with delight, ushering me into the living room with an enthusiasm that bordered on festive. I stared at the numbers above their heads, both near 2,000, and grew even more confused. If I was destined to see his parents thousands of more times, how could I only have 3 visits left with Julian himself? Just then, Julian strolled down the stairs, looking effortless as he adjusted his tie. The number above his head had indeed dropped. It was now a 2. My heart skipped a beat. I gripped my teacup, suddenly losing my ability to speak. Chloe Quinn? What are you doing here? He caught sight of me, a flash of surprise crossing his eyes before a familiar, half-smirking expression settled on his face. He walked over, radiating his usual cool confidence. I set the teacup down and stood up abruptly, doing something completely out of character. I lunged forward and grabbed his arm. Julian, do you have any plans to travel? Are you moving? Immigrating? Julian looked down at my hands on his sleeve, his brow furrowing in genuine confusion. Recently? No. I blinked, feeling the eyes of the household staff on us as they hovered, clearly hungry for gossip. I leaned in, whispering urgently into his ear, "Are you free today? I'm taking you to the clinic for a full physical." Julian might be my nemesis. He'd spent our entire childhood playing pranks on me. But the thought of him dropping dead from some undiagnosed heart condition or a freak aneurysm was too much to bear. His expression shifted slightly in my words, but then he let out a dismissive laugh, reaching out to playfully flick the tip of my nose. "I just had a checkup a few weeks ago. Everything's perfect. Do you want me to forward you the labs?" On the sofa, his parents exchanged a look, their faces a mix of hope and hesitation. I knew what they were thinking. 6 months ago, I had flatly rejected the idea of an arranged marriage between our families. Now, here I was, acting like I couldn't bear to let him go. I couldn't explain it to them, so I just held on tighter, my eyes darting back to that glaring 2 above his head. If it wasn't an illness, then it had to be an accident. "Julian, I'm sticking to you today. Everywhere you go, I go." After making that grand proclamation, I ignored the bewildered stares of everyone in the room and hauled him out the door, my arm firmly locked in his. I was a shadow he couldn't shake. When we reached his office, he had his morning executive meeting. I stood right outside the glass walls of the conference room, staring at the top of his head like a hawk. His secretary, worried I'd get tired, eventually brought me a chair and a latte. At one point, Julian stepped out to use the restroom. I followed him right to the door. He finally turned around, looking utterly helpless. "I think the door is a fair place to stop, don't you?" I grabbed his blazer sleeve, doubling down with shameless logic. "This is your private executive suite. I've seen your toddler photos. It's not like there's anything I haven't seen. What's the big deal if I go in?" Julian looked like he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Exactly how high were the stakes of this truth or dare game? Who did you lose to, Violet Vance? Only she could come up with something this twisted. It clicked. He thought I was doing this because I'd lost a bet. But I couldn't just stay glued to him forever. If he had to, well, do his business, was I really going to stand there and watch him? The mental image was a bit much, even for me. Maybe I should just let him go and see if the number changed when he came back out. I still had one meeting left as a cushion, after all. In those few seconds, 1,000 scenarios ran through my head. Then, Julian's voice broke through, sounding like he was finally surrendering. "Fine, if you want to come in, come in. If you aren't embarrassed, why should I be?" He reached out to pull me inside. I froze, yanked my hand back, and looked away. "Actually, never mind." Julian let out a snort. "Can't handle the heat, Quinn." But as his back disappeared behind the door, panic flared in my chest again. I didn't care how it looked. I pulled out my phone and FaceTimed him. A few seconds later, he picked up. The screen showed the bathroom ceiling, and I could hear the sink running. "Julian, point the camera at your face." At my sharp command, Julian turned off the faucet, dried his hands, and slowly raised the phone. "My dear Chloe, is this just for today? Or is this my new life?" In the frame, his brows were slightly knit, but there wasn't a hint of genuine anger in his eyes. When he finally walked out of the restroom, the number above his head was still a 2. I let out a silent breath of relief. It seemed the numbers didn't drop based on physical distance, but rather on the passage of time or the conclusion of an encounter. As long as I didn't leave him, the count wouldn't go down. I stayed vigilant, checking the air above his head every 30 seconds. By the time the workday ended, my eyelids were twitching from the strain. As we walked out of the Sterling Group headquarters, a black Bentley pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down, revealing Violet Vance's grinning face. Caught you in the act. Tonight was supposed to be our weekly girls' night, but I'd blown her off by text so I could keep an eye on Julian. I hadn't expected her to track me down. Julian glanced at me, his tone sounding slightly possessive. I thought you were having dinner with me tonight. What's she doing here? I stood there, frozen, staring at the number above Violet's head. My heart sank. Violet was my ride or die, my best friend since kindergarten. Why was her number only 15? I immediately yanked open the car door and slid in, dragging Julian in after me. Change of plans. I'm in a great mood, so I'm taking you both to the Hot Springs Resort for a spa night and a massive dinner. My treat. I sat in the middle of the back seat, sandwiched between them, and gave the driver the address of a resort in the valley. The driver looked at Violet, who was clearly confused but didn't argue, and started the car. What the hell was going on? Even Violet's family driver had over 500 meetings left with me. Was this girl hiding something from me? In the car, Violet nudged me with her elbow. Hey, since when are you and the Dark Lord on such good terms? He's your nemesis. You used to run the other way when you saw his car. Before I could answer, Julian spoke up. I have you to thank for it, apparently. Chloe has decided she can't bear to be an inch away from me. Violet looked lost. She pointed a finger at herself. Me? I grabbed her hand, giving her a pointed look. Don't you remember? That bet we made last week? You dared me to stick to Julian like glue for 24 hours. To her credit, my best friend caught on instantly. Oh, right? Of course. Man, I've been so busy lately it totally slipped my mind. My bad. I narrowed my eyes. Busy with what exactly? Violet sighed, her expression shifting between nostalgia and a strange sort of longing. Well, my dad and my stepmother had a talk with me. They're sending me abroad for my master's. Something about putting some actual knowledge in this pretty head of mine and learning how to be independent. Alarm bells went off in my head. Abroad? Since when? When do you leave? Which school? Are you ever coming back? Violet jumped at the intensity of my questions. I just found out myself. My stepmother already handled the applications. I'm gone after New Year's, but it's only a 1-year program, and they have summer breaks. I'll be back. I'm not exactly built for a life of white people food and cold weather. I did the math. Given how often we saw each other, 15 meetings would take us right up to the new year. Was that it? Was I never going to see her again after she left? I felt a cold dread wash over me. I was about to say something when Julian, who had been resting his eyes, spoke up in a low, casual voice. Your stepmother seems very motivated to get you out of the country. Violet nodded. Yeah, but my dad agrees. He thinks it'll be good for me. Julian opened his eyes slightly, a small, knowing smile playing on his lips. Didn't your stepmother just have another baby boy this year? The Vance family's new arrival was the talk of the socialite circles. Violet's mother had passed away years ago, and her father had married a much younger woman who managed to produce an heir within a year. Now, 5 years into the marriage, they had a second son. The more I thought about it, the more suspicious it felt. The Vance family's holdings were massive, top tier in San Francisco. Anyone could see where the money was. If that stepmother had any ulterior motives, I shuddered. Once we got to the resort and changed into our robes, I pulled Violet into the mineral pool and grabbed her shoulders. Violet, listen to me. Do not go. Find an excuse, any excuse, to turn them down. Even if you want to study abroad, wait until after the new year and pick the school and the country yourself. Do not let your stepmother touch your travel plans. Violet blinked her damp lashes. Why? I looked at her innocent, confused face and decided to go for broke. I told her everything, the numbers, the meetings, and what it all meant. By the time I finished, her face was pale. She lunged forward and hugged me. Chloe, please tell me you're just trying to scare me with some weird, creepy pasta. I'm not that creative, Vi, I said, patting her back with a sigh. Violet was always the high-strung type. She immediately grabbed her phone from the edge of the pool and called her dad. She went through the whole repertoire, crying, faking a mysterious illness, and throwing a full-blown tantrum. Luckily, her dad was a softie. He finally gave in, agreeing to postpone the grad school discussion until after the holidays. The second she hung up, I saw it. The number above her head started spinning, climbing higher and higher until it hit 2000 plus. My eyes lit up. I stood up in the pool, splashing water everywhere. If the numbers could change, then Julian could be saved. I threw on my robe and sprinted toward the men's side of the spa. Julian was just finishing up drying his damp, dark hair with a towel. I stopped right in front of him, bent over and gasping for air. I slowly looked up, ready to see a massive new number. But as I looked up, my eyes lingered a little too long on the side of his damp chest where his robe was hanging open. Running that fast? Did a ghost find you? He teased. Normally, I would have had a biting comeback ready. But when I saw the two above his head, still sitting there, cold and unmoving, I didn't know whether to feel relieved or devastated. I was speechless. What did I have to do to make his number explode? As the question hit me, I froze. Was the thought of only seeing Julian twice more really so devastating that I was willing to do anything to change it? The realization that I might actually lose him made my heart drop. I stepped closer, closing the distance between us. Julian, let's stay here tonight. Don't go back. It's the weekend anyway. It's not like you have to be at the Sterling Group offices tomorrow morning. As I racked my brain for a way to convince him to share a room with me, he did something unexpected. He reached out and ruffled my hair. Sure. Actually, after tomorrow, I won't have to clock in at Sterling Group ever again. I blinked, sure I'd misheard him. I looked up and saw a complex, unreadable expression in his eyes. He was tall, devastatingly handsome, and had those bedroom eyes that always seemed to be plotting something. Every time he smiled, I felt like he was a fox about to pull a fast one. That was why I'd avoided him since high school. But our families had been business partners for decades. We were practically permanent fixtures in each other's lives. I reached out and grabbed his wrist, my voice tight. What do you mean? You're bored of being CEO? You want to go find yourself? Or something? Julian looked down at my hand on his wrist for a long time. He didn't say a word. And then, the two above his head suddenly jumped to 10. I blinked. I wasn't seeing things. Just holding his hand increased our meetings? What kind of logic was that? I grabbed his other hand, holding them both tight. Julian's gaze flickered, and the number climbed to 15. I decided to go all in. I let go of his hands and threw my arms around him in a full-on hug. I could feel his heart thumping against mine, a rhythmic, steady beat. I closed my eyes, counted to 5, and then pulled back to look at the number. 30. It was growing exponentially. I was about to go for a level 4 interaction when Julian's fingers gently caught my chin. Chloe Quinn. His voice was a low warning, and his eyes had darkened. I held my breath, the triumphant grin freezing on my face. What exactly is on top of my head that you've been staring at all day? Under the intense heat of his gaze, I opened and closed my mouth, unable to find an explanation that didn't sound insane. I pivoted. You haven't answered me. What did you mean by not being CEO anymore? Julian slowly released my chin, his tone turning nonchalant. Because I'm not a Sterling. Not by blood. The words hit me like a physical weight. Julian, the golden boy, the only son of the Sterling Empire for 25 years, wasn't the biological heir? Seeing my stunned silence, Julian gave a small, wry smile and took my hand, leading me toward the garden. The real Sterling heir is coming home in a few days. They're throwing a welcome home gala before the new year. I figured you'd find out when the invitation arrived at your house. I let him lead me. By the time we sat down in a private dining room, Violet had caught up to us. The table was covered in the delicacies I'd ordered, but I'd lost my appetite. Julian's number had hit 30. We had more time. I didn't have to worry about forcing him to sleep in my room tonight. When Violet and I got back to our suite, I gave her a huge hug. Her number didn't budge. I leaned in and gave her a quick peck on the cheek. Chloe, what the hell? Violet turned bright red, backing away with her hands up. I like guys. Strictly guys. I ignored her, staring at the 2000 plus above her head. It was stuck. Why did the physical contact trick work on Julian, but not on Violet? When I got home from the resort, I smothered my mom with hugs and kisses. Her number didn't move an inch, other than a natural daily decrease. That night, my dad came home from the office and confirmed the rumor about the Sterling family. My mom gasped, clutching her chest. I always said those two were a bit plain looking. How could they have produced a son as gorgeous as Julian? Keep that talk in the house, my dad warned. Don't let the Sterlings hear you. But my mom was on a roll. So what's the plan? They bring the biological son and kick Julian out? What does the real son look like? Did you see a photo? What kind of family raised him? Is he our kind of people? My dad put down his fork. The Sterlings are one of the most powerful families in the state. How many families can really compete with that pedigree? My mom sighed. Well, at least Julian is a grown man. He's brilliant. He'll be fine on his own. I sat there quietly, eavesdropping, until my mom nudged me. You're usually the chatterbox at dinner. Why are you so quiet about the scandal of the century? I shrugged. The switched at birth trope is so overplayed. I've read it in 1,000 novels. It's boring. My mom suddenly seemed to remember something. She leaned over and cupped my face. God, we almost forced you into that engagement with him. Thank heaven you fought us on it. But this would be so awkward right now. I frowned. Mom, even if he isn't a biological Sterling, he's still Julian. It's not like he's suddenly a different person. Don't be such a snob. My parents exchanged a look of pure shock. My darling daughter, what has gotten into you? You're actually defending Julian. Did you forget the time he told you those ghost stories in middle school? You had nightmares for 3 days and wet the bed. Just thinking about that made me grit my teeth. I haven't forgotten. And I haven't forgotten that I tricked him into eating a chocolate bar that was actually a hunk of soap to get him back. I also remember tying his shoelaces to his desk during a nap in high school, making him take the whole desk down with him when he tried to stand up. A wicked smile touched my lips. The night of the gala arrived. The ballroom was packed with the elite, but Julian was nowhere to be found. Instead, in the center of the crowd, I saw the man of the hour, Owen Shaw, now officially Owen Sterling. Owen stood between the Sterling parents in a bespoke suit. He was tan, with an athletic build, sturdy, but his features were, as my mom predicted, a bit more average. But what really caught my eye was the number above his head, a dazzling 5,998. Did you hear? Owen was on a competitive swim team in Southern California, Violet whispered, leaning in with a glass of champagne. I raised an eyebrow. Is athletic prowess a Sterling trait I missed? Not really. Apparently, his adoptive parents were fishermen. He grew up working on boats and diving. I guess it builds muscle. I looked at Owen and gave a dry laugh. Explains the tan. An image flashed through my mind. Julian, wearing heavy yellow waders and a straw hat, bent over a bucket of crabs on a pier somewhere. Chloe, are you okay? Violet asked. You have goosebumps. I shook off the image of Julian smiling at me while holding a bucket of fish. Violet, Owen's number is almost as high as my parents. Violet gasped. Double mine. I nodded. Well, damn. Even if you don't marry him, it looks like you two are destined to be in each other's lives for a long, long time. Well, I didn't reply. She tried to comfort me. Hey, it's fine. He's got small eyes and a bit of a wide mouth, but he looks healthy and honest. Plus, he's a billionaire now. Dating him wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Just then, a smooth, familiar voice spoke from behind us. What destiny are we talking about? I spun around. Julian was there, dressed in a charcoal gray suit, his hair perfectly styled. He looked sharper, more dangerous than usual. But the sharpest thing was the number above his head. It was a 1. I almost laughed out of sheer frustration. This guy's number was like a prepaid phone. If you didn't top it off, it just expired. If I didn't know better, I'd swear Julian was messing with me on purpose. Out of everyone I knew, he was the only one whose numbers defied all logic and changed without warning. If I couldn't see the count, I would have assumed that after this party, we'd just go our separate ways, and that would be it. Violet was about to say something, but I grabbed Julian's hand and started hauling him toward the exit. You're coming with me. We need to talk. I pulled him through the crowd, ignored the curious stares, and led him all the way to the hotel's rooftop terrace. I let go of his hand, turned around, and glared at the one above his head before looking him in the eye. Okay, Julian, what's the plan? Are you leaving the Sterlings? Leaving San Francisco? Going back to your bio parents to sell seafood and ghost all your old friends? The wind caught Julian's tie, and he gave a small, weary smile. He nodded slowly. Yeah, that's pretty much the plan. Something inside me snapped, like a cable fraying until it finally gave way. A cold draft caught the gap of my shawl, and I shivered. Seeing me shake, Julian took off his jacket and stepped toward me to drape it over my shoulders. As he started to pull away, I grabbed him again. What is it? He asked, looking genuinely lost. I didn't give him a chance to think. I grabbed his face with both hands and kissed him hard. The only sound were the wind and the thunderous beat of my own heart. It felt just like it had at the resort. After a moment, I felt his arm wrap around my waist. I pulled back instantly and looked up. 50. The pattern was clear. I didn't waste a second. I went in for another kiss. But this time his hand caught my jaw, stopping me. His other hand tightened around my waist, pulling me flush against him. His heat radiated through my dress, and his breath was warm against my skin. I'd done it. I had actually initiated a makeout session with Julian Sterling. Chloe Quinn, what is this? His voice was lower, huskier than before. He traced my lower lip with his thumb. I decided to go for the nuclear option. Julian, move in with me. Marry into the Quinn family. I'll make sure you keep living the high life. You won't have to worry about money. You won't have to go pick crabs on a boat. And you won't have to work in the sun. Julian's eyes cleared, and then they crinkled at the corners. He looked like he was trying not to laugh. Are you proposing to me? Yeah. What's your answer? He looked at me, his gaze so tender it felt like I was melting. You're very bossy, Chloe. I didn't mind the comment because the number above his head was skyrocketing. In seconds, it went from double digits to hundreds. As I was mentally high-fiving myself, Julian spoke again, his voice slow and deliberate. But I only marry people who actually like me. Do you like me? I thought you've been avoiding me like the plague since high school. You seem to hate me. And besides, 6 months ago, you were the one who refused the engagement. Why the change of heart? Look at me, Chloe. Why do you keep looking at the top of my head? I guiltily dropped my gaze. I didn't know which of his 4 questions to tackle first. Luckily, a group of security guards burst onto the roof, saving me from answering. Seeing us wrapped around each other, one of them coughed into his hand and spoke into his radio. Found the Quinn heiress. She's on the roof. She's currently occupied with Mr. Sterling. By the time we went back down, the party had moved outdoors for live music. Violet's 5-year-old half-brother, Leo, saw us and pointed a chubby finger at Julian. Mom, look, it's the fake one. Violet's stepmother quickly covered the boy's mouth, giving us a polite, hollow smile. Kids say the darndest things. I'm sure Mr. Sterling doesn't mind. Julian didn't flinch. I looked at the kid's perfectly groomed bowl cut and rolled my eyes at his mother. Kids say what they hear at home. It's a shame when parents forget to teach manners. The stepmother's face hardened. She clearly hadn't expected me to be so blunt. Miss Quinn, are you suggesting I'm a bad mother? If the shoe fits, Mrs. Vance. I never liked her or her spoiled brat. Every time I visited Violet, Leo would either throw toys at me or wipe his sticky hands on my designer dresses. If it weren't for Violet, I would have snapped a long time ago. The stepmother sneered, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Well, children are honest. He is a fake, Sterling, isn't he? That's just a fact. I knew there were plenty of vultures in this room, waiting to tear Julian down. But doing it in front of me, that was a mistake. Julian held me back as I started to step forward. He walked calmly over to the mother and son, leaned down, and smiled at the boy. Hey there, little guy. You should tell your mom to get you a different haircut. That bowl cut is really embarrassing. People are going to laugh at you. The kid's lip wobbled, and then he burst into a full-blown wail. I laughed out loud. The stepmother looked horrified, pulling her son back. You're a grown man. How can you pick on a child? I guess your true colors are showing. Low-class breeding will always out. I stepped up, delivering the final blow. What's the matter? You love honesty when it's your kid talking, but you can't handle it when it's about his hair. I tucked my arm through Julian's and led him away. I grabbed a Petit Four from a passing tray and pressed it into his hand. Don't listen to that brat. Julian, I've got your back. Being a Quinn son-in-law is a sweet deal. Trust me. Julian looked at the little cake, then at me, a soft curve touching his lips. I haven't said yes yet. I looked at the number above his head. It had surged past 5000. You will, I said confidently. I happily ate my cake while Julian watched me, reaching out to wipe a smudge of frosting from the corner of my mouth. It was a completely natural gesture. Nearby, Violet's jaw had dropped. She pulled me aside the moment she could. Chloe, I knew something was up at the spa. What is going on with you and the Dark Lord? We're getting married, I said, echoing Julian's casual tone. Violet was vibrating with shock. What? When? How did I miss this entire character arc? I sighed. I feel bad for him. He had 25 years of the good life, and then, boom, he's a commoner. He was going to leave the city, leave everything behind. I couldn't just let him go. You feel bad for him? Violet looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Chloe, are you serious? Did you not hear? Sterling Group is putting Julian in charge of their entire overseas division. He's keeping his equity, his bonuses, everything. His net worth is actually going up. The only thing he's losing is the Sterling bloodline. He's probably the most eligible bachelor in the country right now. Now it was my turn to be stunned. Wait, really? I overheard the parents talking earlier. He's too valuable to the company to let go. I looked over at Julian, who was currently the center of a circle of investors, looking every bit the powerful executive. That silver-tongued fox. He let me believe he was going to be a penniless fisherman just to get a rise out of me. But wait, even if he was testing me, the numbers don't lie. Before I kissed him, his number really was 1. He really was prepared to walk away from me, forever. Our eyes met across the room. His number was now almost as high as my father's, and it was still ticking upward. The stubborn man. He'd clearly been won over by a single kiss, but he was still playing hard to get. After the gala, the news broke that Julian was staying on as the head of international operations. Everyone realized the Sterling parents couldn't bear to lose their star pupil, especially since Owen, the biological son, had no interest in business and was currently training for the Olympic trials. Julian was busier than ever, but he called and texted constantly. He sent flowers, he sent jewelry, he asked me out every chance he got. I played it cool. I replied to his texts politely, accepted the gifts graciously, but I turned down every single date. After a month, he finally snapped. On the phone after a long day of checking in, his voice dropped to a low, dangerous register. Chloe Quinn, are you forgetting something? I knew exactly what he was talking about. Nope. I remember proposing to you a month ago. There was a long silence on the other end. And you didn't say yes, I said cheerfully. And since the famous Mr. Sterling has plenty of money and fame now, I figured you wouldn't need a sugar mama to take care of you anymore. I heard a soft laugh, but it had a distinct edge of, you're going to pay for that to it. Oh, so the proposal wasn't sincere? Good to know. I sense a trap. What do you mean, good? Julian's voice returned to that effortless, lazy drawl. I'm calling to say goodbye. I'm leaving next week. Unless it's strictly business, I don't plan on coming back to the States for a long time. I narrow my eyes, playing the leaving card again. This arrogant, stubborn man. Would it kill him to just say he's loved me for years? I had recently gone down to my basement storage and found my 18th birthday gift from him. Hidden under the velvet lining of the music box was a diamond ring. He'd been holding on to that secret for 5 years while I threw his gifts into storage without a second thought. If I'd known back then how he felt, I probably would have been terrified. I would have thought he was playing another one of his psychological games. But at 23, finding that ring felt like the most perfect timing in the world. I wanted to see how long he could keep up the act. Wow, leaving so soon? Why don't we meet up tomorrow, so I can give you a proper send-off? A man who was actually leaving wouldn't have a meeting count of 3. A man who was already mine, however, well, the numbers don't lie. We met at the golf club. Julian was dressed in light casuals, wearing aviators, standing in the winter sun like a tall, sturdy pine tree. And above that tree was the number 9999 plus. The plus was key. It meant we had reached the limit of what the display could show. At a rate of 1 meeting a day, that was at least 27 years of guaranteed time together. I was in a great mood. I was sinking putts left and right. Julian leaned on his putter, watching me. My flight is at 11 on Tuesday morning. I finished a swing and gave him a bright smile. I know. You mentioned it 3 times. I'll be there to wave goodbye. Then I paused, mock confused. Wait, you're flying to London, right? Actually, plans changed. I'm resigning from Sterling Group. I'm giving up the assets and going back to my roots. I'm going to work the docks, maybe start a small seafood distribution business. Back to the life I was supposed to have. I pointed a finger at my temple. Are you feeling okay in there? Julian shrugged, looking perfectly at peace. I know you don't get it, but this is the life I should have lived. It's time to put things back on track. Chloe, we were never supposed to be in the same world. Despite the tough guy speech, his number didn't drop a single digit. I put my hands on my hips and sighed dramatically. Life is so unpredictable. You're right, we shouldn't have overlapped. The person I should be with is Owen. Julian stiffened visibly. I leaned into the bit. Once you're gone, maybe I'll give Owen a call. Arranged marriage, keeping things on track. I could do that too. He finally broke. He stepped toward me, his face dark. You wouldn't marry me, but you'd marry him? I took off my sunglasses and blinked innocently. I was willing to marry you, but you didn't say yes. I'm a busy woman, Julian. I can't wait forever. Julian let out a frustrated laugh, tossing his glasses aside. Was that proposal even real? You were just pitying me. If you actually liked me, why did you ignore the ring I gave you years ago? Why did you reject the engagement 6 months ago? I laughed. I took off my glove and handed it to the caddy, then walked over and tapped Julian's chest. Julian, look at this. On my left hand, a heart-shaped diamond ring glittered in the sun. 5 years in a basement hadn't dimmed its spark one bit. Julian froze. He looked at the ring, then at me, completely speechless. I wrapped my arms around his neck and whispered in his ear, if you want to win the girl, you have to actually use your words. You have a mouth, don't you? Julian let out a long, shaky breath, his arms tightening around my waist. I used it once. It made you cry and hide for 3 days. I laughed again. He pulled back, searching my face. Chloe Quinn, you're serious? You'll marry me? I punched him lightly on the shoulder. We almost missed it, you idiot. If I hadn't gained this weird superpower, my own density probably would have let him walk out of my life forever. I wouldn't have realized how much he meant to me until he was gone. I wanted to tease him more, but he leaned down and kissed me so deeply I had to lean back to keep my balance. After the new year, Violet actually followed through on her plan to go to grad school. She said things had gotten tense at home. Her dad and stepmother were fighting constantly. Apparently, the stepmother had offended the Sterling family, and several of the Vance family projects were suddenly hitting major roadblocks. Her dad, who used to spoil his young son, was now constantly complaining about how the boy was being ruined by indulgence. He'd started taking Violet into his study for long talks about the future of the company. You know, Chloe, Violet said at the airport, looking unusually serious. I think I was really immature before. When I come back, I'm going to take over Vance Holdings. I'm going to make it bigger than ever. I looked at the 2000 plus above her head and nodded. Most people care if you fly high. I'm the only one worried you'll work yourself to death. Violet laughed and hugged me. In the third year of our marriage, the Sterling family had another reason to celebrate. Owen had won gold at the World Championships, becoming a national hero. With Owen in the sports world and Julian unofficially leading the business side, the Sterlings became the most influential family in the city. Eventually, the numbers started to fade. I couldn't see them over people's heads anymore. One night, as I was drifting off to sleep in Julian's arms, I heard him whisper against my ear. Chloe, did you know? During that year when I was most desperate, I actually went to see a medium. I asked if we were destined to be together. She told me that if there was a spark of fate left, there would be a sign. Something unexplainable would pull us back together. And the very next day, you wouldn't leave my side. Thank you for coming back to me. You gave me hope when I had none left. I woke up a little, blinking my sleepy eyes. It's funny how life works. A connection can vanish in a second, or it can be forged in an instant. But fate finally let me hold on to the one person I was never supposed to lose. Story complete.